Welcome to a Dead Squirrel in the Woods Productions. This is a bonus content episode with me, your host, Nicholas. And thanks for listening. If you would like early access to the show on Monday instead of Friday, be sure to subscribe to our page on Spotify for $2.99 a month. Otherwise, we can be found on YouTube and iHeartRadio with new episodes premiering on Fridays. This week, I'm going to talk to you about some famous lost ships on Lake Superior. All of them have their own unique ghost stories. So, let's not fool around here. Let's just dive right in. The first ship we're going to talk about is the SS Bannockburn. On November 20th of 1902, Captain George Wood would take the steel-hulled ship from Portland Arthur, Ontario, on its way to Midland, Georgian Bay, loaded with a shipment of wheat. Now, this ship was built to handle the strong waves of the Atlantic Ocean, and this was planned to be her last shipment of the season. Little did anybody know this was the last shipment the Bannockburn would ever attempt to deliver. She is also, over time, been referred to as the Flying Dutchman of Lake Superior. The Bannockburn would never make it to Midland. Tragedy struck on Lake Superior on the trip, and to this day, nobody knows where she is. The mystery of her whereabouts and what caused her to sink still lives today. There are still ghostly sightings of the Bannockburn. The ship was slated to depart on November 20th, filled with 85,000 bushels of wheat. The chief engineer, George Booth, was ready for the season to be done. He badly needed to help take care of his son, who was ill, and to make things worse, his family just lost his daughter to a sudden illness. The plan for this trip was that the ship would make its last delivery of the season and then go to Kingston, Ontario to dock till springtime for the next season. Now, to say this journey did not start out good, that would be an understatement. The ship was planned to travel an established route following the U.S. and Canadian border. When she took off that day, well, she would run aground on a sandbar during the night. Now, this isn't a big deal because it was not uncommon at the time for ships to be delayed by up to a day or two. Yeah, she was off to a rough start, but it's something that at that time wasn't a big deal. By 9 a.m. the next morning, they had offloaded enough grain to get free of the sandbar that they got stuck in. They would travel about 10 to 15 miles per hour crossing the deep waters after they, of course, got unstuck. Now, around noon, from the northwest, a storm formed on the lake. This was a storm that was hovering in the north central part of the lake, an area the ship had to sail through. The waves reached 15 feet high, crashing over the deck of the ship. The SS Algonquin and her captain saw the Blackburn pushing through the waves into a fog bank. Now, this sighting was logged, and the other ship went about its business. Now, both ships have weathered worse storms than this storm, so this did not alarm anybody. Now, the captain took one last look in the direction of the Bannockburn to see, and she was gone. It was foggy, and they thought nothing of it. Now, something happened in those few minutes, and to this day, this is still a mystery. So now, the Solox operators were not shocked when the Bannockburn missed the scheduled time to pass through the lock that took them to Lake Huron. She was scheduled to pass November 23rd. But, like I said at that point, they weren't too worried about it, that no search parties or anything like that was sent out. But when it got to the 26th, well, that all changed. There were 40 ships on the lake that had the same route as the Bannockburn, and not a single one had seen her. So where was she? What happened? So, alright. Many thought the ship settled into an area and waited out the storm. Now, others surmised the ship was stranded at Caribou Island, or an island near there. The problem is that the two islands are well traveled, so you would think that she would have been spotted there. I mean, 40 ships were taking the same route. So, during all of this, there was, of course, some misidentifications and misinformation as well. Now, the Huronic, a passenger ship, reported seeing the Bannockburn at 11 p.m., but this was most likely a guess with all likelihood, seeing there was a raging storm and it would be pitch black at the time. Now, the Bannockburn had a sister ship called the Rosemount, and they did look similar. The Rosemount was just a little bigger. Just like any event, you have your false reports, and there was no expectation that there wasn't going to be. There were a lot of reports that she had ran ashore or anchored near Caribou Island. Now, on November 30th, the ship and its crew were officially declared lost, and the ship, sadly, was a very young crew, mostly made up of 16 to 20-year-olds. Nobody knows what happened, so it's kind of a mystery still. Now, but the Bannockburn was not a very lucky ship in its 9 years of service. The ship actually had sunk twice. The first time nobody was harmed. So now that second time, she's never been seen again. She was built in 1893, and it took 4 years for her to sink for the first time. She took on 9 feet of water after hitting the wing wall at lock number 17 of the Welland Canal, which links Lake Ontario and Lake Erie. There was also a possible incident in November when she was on her way to Fort William at the end of the season. The Solocks were inspected and drained for repairs and inspection, and there was a steel hull plate that probably belonged to the Bannockburn. So it is possible that she had a damaged hull. Yeah, that doesn't sound very good. Now, around 7 years after vanishing, the legend that she was a phantom ship cruising around Lake Superior during storms and fog started getting attention. It was becoming very noticed. The most popular tale involves another freighter, the Walter A. Hitchinson. The ship got caught in a winter storm in November 1947. This took out the electronics and navigation systems of the ship. The Hitchinson moved closer to the shore when the Bannockburn manifested and charged the ship. Now, the crew tried hard to avoid the collision, and they succeeded. The Bannockburn charged forward, missing and hitting the rocks and vanishing. If the Bannockburn would not have appeared to the Hitchinson, she would have hit the rocks instead. So it appears the Bannockburn warned the ship of the danger. In more recent sightings, this one was from October 2016. There was a filming of a music video near Marquette, Michigan, and it's reported you can see 3 masts far out on the lake. Now this could have been a ship far out, or a manifestation of the Bannockburn. Does not sound like that, considering there's really only 3 reasons that, according to legend, that the Bannockburn will manifest. One is on stormy nights and days. The second, when accompanied by a fog bank. And lastly, as we discussed earlier, when other ships are in danger of running ashore. Now, this would not be complete if I did not bring up some theories that are out there on what may have happened. Okay? So, first we have the boiler exploded. Well, the big problem with this would be that with all the ships out there, there would have been smoke, of course, so that would have been seen. And if explosion would cause debris, and there was no debris found. So, second theory is, and again, this one is kind of far-fetched too, because of the debris problem. It ran into a Lake Superior shoal, and a shoal is an underwater mountain, and the ship was torn apart, but this would have left wreckage and debris too, so this is doubtful. Now, the most logical of the 3 theories that are mentioned would be that she had a broken rudder, and this caused her to capsize because they couldn't steer properly. There could also be another malfunction that maybe could have caused complications, is my theory. But This would explain why no debris was found and the grain did not rise to the surface, because if she capsized, it'd be covering the grain. So now, after she disappeared on June 23rd of 1903, the Westmont, a ship just like the Bannockburn, entered the Great Lakes. She did a lot better. She survived a good amount of years with many different purposes. So, and she was actually bigger than the Bannockburn. To this day, all we have is the legend of the Bannockburn and a plaque honoring Captain Wood in Port de la House, Ontario. What happened remains a mystery to this day. Yeah, maybe one day we'll know what happened that night. Our next ship is the SS Reserve, a 301-foot long steel freighter built in 1890 in Cleveland, Ohio by Globe Shipping. She was the first of her kind for use on the lakes. When she was built, it was expected that this would put an end to events caused by hull failure. But since we're talking about it, that's probably not the case. It didn't go like they wanted. Now, some sources say that the steel was contaminated with phosphorus and sulfur, leading to brittle steel. I don't think there's anything more to add to that. It only took about 2 years to pass. On August 30th, 1892, she would break into two and sink off of Deer Park, Michigan. Yes, that is right. I said break in two. Most ships don't break in two, but this one did. She also had a sister ship that sank in the same fashion. So, apparently the steel in that time was not very durable. This would open the door for a new marine steel that was more flexible and could flex with the hitting of the waves. Also, laws for testing steel to make sure that it was solid. It was what's the word? Good enough to make a ship out of and would be sturdy. So there is a silver lining to the sinking of this ship, but still not a good thing. What happened the day of August 30th, 1892? Well, we first have to go back to August 28th, 1892, when Captain Peter Minch, an experienced lake skipper, and coincidentally he owned the ship, with his family, wife, son, daughter, sister-in-law, and niece, all boarded the Western Reserve for a vacation trip up the lakes. So this was a freighter, and they used it to take a vacation with. So he owned it, so it is what it is. Being a vacation trip, the ship went without any cargo. So she stood high on the water as she passed through Port Huron at 9:20 p.m. on the 29th. And she made it to the Sault, which is an area they have to go through to transfer to different lakes. So And that happened at 12:30 p.m. the next day. And she was accompanied by a steamer called the Peerless. Now, according to reports, there was a crew of 27 that accompanied them, and only one survived. Or, I'm not sure, it didn't say if the crew was 27 or it was a total of 27 people. So, but we're looking at anywhere between a little over 30 to 27 people on the ship. The only person to survive was 24-year-old Harry W. Stewart, a wheelsman. Now, a severe storm was building. This should not have been a storm that the ship would have a problem with. So, but coincidentally, a crack appeared on the deck, which that would kind of freak me out if I saw that and I was on a boat, especially on Lake Superior or any of the lakes. But it quickly widened after. Now, the passengers and crew quickly went to the yawl boats. It only took 10 minutes, though, and the Western Reserve was underwater. It was gone. And this would happen about 60 miles from Whitefish Bay and 35 miles from Deer Park, at roughly 9 p.m. on the 30th. All the people except Stewart, the wheelsman. Stewart. He was an expert swimmer, so he kind of had an advantage over them. He swam for 2 hours. Now, I'm lucky if I'm in shape enough to last 10 minutes swimming back and forth. But he made it 2 hours, but he was young, so I guess the loss was the greatest financial loss of the 19th century on the lakes. And this ship wasn't even carrying any load to deliver, so this was a pretty expensive ship, I'm guessing. Now, the weird tale of this is that a Captain Trudell of the Great Lakes Life-Saving Service says he had a vivid dream of the sinking of the Western Reserve. It was so real that when the bodies started washing ashore and he was there, he was able to actually identify the captain, Peter Minch. The only part of the ship that was recovered is the starboard light. And that is the lantern on the ship. So that floated ashore, and the lantern had made its way over time to the home of James A. Garfield, the 20th president, at his home, of course, in Mentor, Ohio. So so now Harry Stewart, he would live until 1938, so he would live another 37 years. And after the incident, he would continue to sail the lakes, which I think is pretty brave after what happened. But, good for him. To this day, the ship has not been located. So maybe one day we will find the ship. There are shipwreck hunters out there, and maybe one day they'll find it, and we will know exactly where she has is resting. So, till then, I guess that's all for this tale. Now, let's move on to September 16th, 1901, and the tale of the Hudson. The Hudson sank around Keewaydin Point, and she was built in Detroit in 1888. Now, she was carrying flax and wheat from Duluth, and this was a very recognizable ship for her time. Now, it took 118 years for her to be found after she sank that day. The Hudson would pass through the Duluth Ship Canal, flying her flags at half-mast, paying their respects to President William McKinley, who was assassinated on September 6th, and he endured about 8 days of very poor medical attention, but he passed away on the 14th, and it was announced that he had passed away to the public on the 16th. Now, this was a very somber way to start the journey. Maybe even an eerie foreshadowing. I'm sure that no one on board would have thought in just hours they would be in distress themselves. So, the day after leaving Twin Ports, hauling flax. Now, flax is a flowering plant that can be cultivated as food or used to make linen. And then they were also carrying wheat. The Hudson would run straight into a gale. And it was thought the reason for her sinking was that she capsized. And this is most likely from the cargo shifting, which flax is known to do, and the combination of the storm as well. So now, as years passed, there were tales of sightings of her as a ghost ship. Over the years, the story of the Hudson would fade, though. That is, until the summer of 2019. The Minnesota Public Radio would report that shipwreck hunters, Jerry Ellison and Craig Smith, they used cameras and sonars, and they ended up locating the Hudson 825 feet down. And this was in Lake Superior. The Hudson has its own legend surrounding it. Now, the legend goes that a tugboat captain and his first mate were near where the Hudson sank on September 16th, coincidentally, the same day it sank, in 1947. And let's see here. So the legend goes they saw a rusty ship covered in brown slime coming right for them. To avoid the collision, they got close enough. They avoided the collision, and then they got close enough that the captain boarded the ship. Now, this was a ghost ship, so I don't know how he boarded the ship, but okay. This is the tale that they are telling. He was greeted by apparitions, and upon his arrival, they explained to the captain that they were cursed to relive the event every year on the day it happened. With that warning, they still had to warn the captain to get off the ship before they sank. But the captain jumped off and swam in the cold and icy water back to the tugboat. Yeah, so it's kind of creepy, but it was found, and that's a good thing. And it's also was also reported that the ship was mostly intact too, so that was positive. So most likely it did capsize, and we now know the resting place of the Hudson. This has been a Dead Squirrel in the Woods Productions. This was edited by me, Nicholas. And thank you for listening, and be sure to check us out on our socials. Follow us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button to be notified, and we are also on Facebook, and we have a website. We also have a subscription option for $2.99 on Spotify to get access to the show on Mondays instead of on Friday when they normally would drop. Hope to have you back for future episodes.